I'm delighted to introduce our moderator for the session, who's going to guide us through the conversation with our industry panel. So introducing Juliane Caillouette-Noble, the MD of Sustainable Restaurant Association. Before joining the SRA, Juliane was running Jamie Oliver's programs for improving school food and food education across the UK, so knows all about how to achieve impact at scale. So thank you so much for joining us today, Juliane. I'm going to hand over to you to introduce your panel.
Great. Thank you so much, Catherine. And it is a pleasure to be with you all today. I love these wrap seminars and how practical we get on this advice. And it's a really great opportunity to have discussions with people across the whole industry. So please do pop your questions in the chat or in the Q&A function while we are chatting, and we'll find some time to throw those to the panel throughout our conversation. So I'm really pleased to welcome our panelists. We have Vince Kelly joining us from Westminster Kingsway College. We have Paul Mannering joining us from HIT Training. And we have Ellie Besley-Gould joining us from Hawksmoor. So if you guys all want to go ahead and turn your cameras on and join us for the panel, brilliant. So just to kick us off with our discussion, perhaps we can throw to each of you to share with us what your kind of drivers are in this conversation in terms of developing sustainability skills for the sector, or particularly how developing skills around food waste, affects the role that you guys do. So could we start with you, Vince?
Hi, how you doing? First of all, thanks very much for being asked to come on to this panel with some great colleagues. It's a great job that Gardens of Grub are doing as well, alongside WRAP. I'm really looking forward to Food Waste Action Week as well at Westminster Kingsway. We've got a bit of a plan in place for what we're going to be doing for that. So yeah, and I guess for me, from being a lecturer at Westminster Kingsway, I feel that education, I suppose, is the most important part for me. I think that's where we'll start and move forward from there. One thing that does annoy me, and Juliane, I didn't realize your background, but I really want to get this onto the educational agenda in a big way, as do many people. I have co-wrote a module, Healthy Play, Healthy Planet, aimed at chefs a couple of years ago alongside Nestle Professional Footprint Intelligence. And the idea was to kind of roll that out and share that around to other colleges and everything else. And there is some great stuff out there. There's Future Plates as well. They've got some great resources as well that I tap into and use myself. But yeah, just trying to get that through to the students. And that, again, is not always an easy thing either. It can be difficult to get people. I think the most important thing you need to have is a plan of action, really, isn't it, before you start anything, and get everybody on board as well. So getting the whole team on board, which can be difficult in a very large institution at times. But, we've taken a lot of steps to try and get that onto the agenda big time, and finally starting to see it come together now with COVID, finally, hopefully, knock on wood, going away, etc. Yeah, so I guess I just kind of work on educating the chefs, kind of like using that module as a starting point. That's what I do. And then I kind of really talk to the students about making the vegetable the center of the plate. Talk about crop diversity, how important it is for using different types of crops and the effects that can have on farmers in developing countries. Main example of that, I suppose, is like a sweet potato or yam, and how great that is because that can grow in such dry conditions. Things like how 60% of the world's population depend on trees, same grains, and talk about other grains that we can use, and just kind of really highlighting with a lot of punchline things for them around the future and sustainability, I suppose, impact figures kind of thing. But that's kind of the most impact that I see at my place anyway, is trying to get it into the education. I would love to get it onto curriculum because that's a bit of an issue. And then you're always going to have problems with getting things on the curriculum. If they're not on the curriculum, the hours won't be paid for the lecturers to teach them, etc., etc. Although they can get underpinned, I still would love to see an actual whole complete module based on that, so that there's a whole, concentration just on sustainability and food waste. But I think by underpinning it in clever ways is also a great first step.
Great. I couldn't agree more. Ellie, do you want to tell us a little bit about your interest in developing these skills across the sector and how you're thinking about it?
Yeah, sure. So I think our sort of drivers for change are probably coming from a few places. Primarily, it comes from our staff. We've got, young staff. It's a competitive recruitment market, as everyone's mentioned, and people are fascinated in being part of the solution and wanting to know more about how. And kind of top with that, we are a restaurant that serves primarily beef. And when our customers come in, they want to enjoy the meat they're having, because we're all eating a bit less. We all want to make sure when we do eat meat, it's a lot better. And so taking a lot more interest in the sourcing of meat. So when we have it, we can be really we can rest assured that we know it's the good stuff. And it also means that when it comes to things like food waste, it really matters a lot more, because so much has gone into creating that food. So it's a really vital piece of what we're doing. And the way that we've kind of embedded it, I guess, so far, and we're on a journey and there's so much more to do, is that we've started out by kind of working with all the managers in the company and teaching a base level of the why bit. So why is food waste so critical? It's not just about the bins. It's not just about finance chasing you for the cost of your general waste. It's about kind of the footprint of everything that came before. And I think Cyrus was talking about the costs, both the direct costs of waste before it hits the plate, but also the revenue costs of getting rid of your waste at the end of it. And I think that's so critical, seeing the whole picture. But also I think the engagement with the people who work in our restaurants, the amazing people, they have so many big ideas, and kind of sitting down with them, going to briefings, going to kitchens and chatting to chefs and finding out what they want to do. And it turns out everyone has a bugbear, everyone has an idea, and looking at how we turn kind of really happy, I don't want to say mistakes, but we have some happy mistakes in the way that we've done things. We're really lucky that we made good choices at the beginning, but it wasn't necessarily that organized. So being able to integrate that in a more coherent way and use staff input as well as kind of the director purpose drive to do that has been really critical for us.
Well, and Paul, do you want to share a bit about where you guys are coming from at HIT?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the opportunity. I think it's been touched on, before, but people are definitely hospitality industry's greatest asset. And I think, as Vince has said, and Ellie, you've got to invest in your staff, you've got to invest in your people and support and educate, almost empower them to start taking on board some of these key messages. I think what we've tried to do in the Chef Academy approach for HIT is actually develop that culture. So it's that kind of teach, not preach philosophy, that people can get involved and they understand the value of food, beyond what appears in their kitchen, that they understand that, the whole journey that somebody, a farmer, a grower, somebody's actually taken the time to grow and bring that product to you. And that in turn is, represents a big commitment in their time and resource to do that. And I think if students can get that respect for food, then they're skills they can take on in life as well. They can apply that when they're doing their own shopping, their own cooking. We try and take a sort of a closed loop approach to food waste, so that actually we will repurpose things that would end up in the dustbin, trim. We want them to make the best use of everything. We do these little dishes. My vice principal and I work on dustbin dishes. So it'd be like a piccalilli from trim, for things that would have been thrown away. And actually, not only are you using the best parts of the food, the tastiest parts, but again, that's revenue. If you can make something delicious, something tasty that is going to delight a customer, then for me that's a win-win for everybody. And to understand that process is actually upskilling our chefs as well. It's easy to peel something and throw the nutritious bits or the bits you can use away without any kind of thought. But if you can turn that into some food that can complement the dish, then I think that's a powerful story. We also try and work with other sort of champions in terms of things like fermentation and bring some of those kind of principles into cookery. So I think much to what Vince was saying is it's embedding it within the sort of syllabus. It's making sure that these lessons are sown at the earliest opportunities. These aren't things we should hold back for the sort of senior team. These have got to be understood by the kitchen porter, the commis chef, the apprentice, right the way through to the top. And I think if you have that approach, you're kind of halfway there to getting everybody on board, and then that message becomes more of a reality.
Definitely. Vince, you were talking about how you're underpinning these principles at every kind of point that you can, and yet there's no overarching, requirement for sustainability on the curriculum. How are your students responding to this? And are you kind of finding that in line with what the other speakers have said around young people's kind of interest and drive, or does it feel like you're trying to shoehorn as you go along to inspire action?
There is definitely, it's all over the media, which always helps, doesn't it? And so it's almost cool now to be sustainable, isn't it? Everybody's got sustainability in their title. So it's very at the front now. And like I've actually changed a module that some of my level 5 students will be doing in this semester, but I kind of teach a lot of higher education stuff, but I also am involved with the 16 to 19 year olds, which is so trying to embed it into them because they're all coming straight in from school into professional chef. And some of the early reactions with them has been quite well. It's been taken up very well. They're kind of like, well, what we got to waste? We got to like put all the stuff in the different buckets and this is going to be a pain, blah, blah, blah. But then when they start doing it, they start to realize, and then, there's nothing like physically seeing things, isn't there not? And just trying to show them interesting little things you can do. Like one of my favorite ones actually is just taking the heart of a pepper, and the middle bit, just take the green stalk off. But if you use the middle bit, you can actually make a really cool pesto out of that. And it's kind of gives you a nuttiness from the seeds of the pepper, and you get a creaminess from the actual heart of the pepper too. So that's trademark. It's quite good fun with different soft herbs, and if you're using microgreens and things like that, you can get some really interesting flavors in the pesto with that. But so they kind of enjoying them kind of innovative kind of ways, I suppose, and things like using the banana skin in a smoothie. They don't realize that you can actually just use the skin as well, and making chutneys and things out of the skins and things like that. So that's kind of, it's just to think about just being clever with what you're using up and showing them all the different ways. And, we all know the cauliflower stuff, but, even again, from a fine dining point of view, if you take the inside, the core of the actual cauliflower, you get really, all of us professional chefs kind of do this now, where we can kind of sous vide it in oils and flavors and everything else, but you get such lovely little circles and lovely little shapes that if you blow torch the side of it, it looks really cool on the plate as well, and tastes lovely, and it gets a nice texture too. And so there's you can really kind of see it changing, and you can see a bit of a shift there, which is fantastic. And it's just kind of running with that momentum now and trying to encourage all the people upstairs to take it on board a little bit and start moving forward. Yeah.
In some ways, those young people are an asset, right? Because
like Sarah said, it's their future.
Yeah,
and it's their future. That is something I always say to the younger ones as well. It's like, it's not much point in me. Well, there's plenty of point in me doing this, but it's about you guys, and and I think we shouldn't be so dismissive, I suppose, of our home either. I've got 3 young kids, and everything that we do, they always like take me off when they're in their friends' houses about how bang on about how nutritious something is, or how we could be wasting that. Oh, my dad would make us eat that, and that sort of thing. But it's parents have a big role to play as well, don't they? I guess so.
Definitely. And kind of, I guess, following your journey from the beginning of someone's career up to, Paul, the work that you're doing across training across the sector. Are you noticing any sort of difference in terms of demand, or the way that the training that you are delivering is being asked for, and any sort of increase, I suppose, especially around food waste or other particular sustainability areas?
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen a huge interest has been increased across things like plant forward alternative menus. I think people are starting to question how recipes and menus should be put together, and also from an inclusivity point of view. They want people to be able to actually enjoy the same food, whether you're using meat-based proteins or whether you're using plant-based. And I think all of these messages, reducing wastage and sustainability are big sort of key drivers for that. I think wastage is one of those things that in some organizations they have become quite complacent about, but if you start to apply those principles of respecting where it's come from, the disrupted supply chain issues of Brexit, or even if it's just down to pounds going in the bin, there's something for everybody there that you can help kind of paint that picture. And I think more and more organizations are asking for that kind of training. And I think the great thing about what we can do, we're quite flexible about how we can put our programs together. So we can get those things in, at almost first workshop, first interactions with an apprentice, and we are developing and have developed modules to support that. And actually they are being really well received. I think the work we do in schools is really critical as well. Educating children where food comes from is a big, almost missing jigsaw piece. And I think it saddens me sometimes that kids recognise fruit and veg from apps and games on phones, but don't actually understand where it comes from in reality. And I think that's where understanding and respecting the process, starts to get some of those messages understood earlier on.
Absolutely. I think you said something interesting there when you mentioned the disrupted supply chain. And to me, it feels like there's actually an increasing awareness on some of these things because of the necessities of some of the crises that we've faced as an industry over the last 18 months. So all of a sudden you're having to repurpose some of your waste because you're short on ingredients and you're having to, figure it out in a kitchen, or you're having to think differently about sourcing more locally because of the impact that COVID and Brexit and all of these things have had. So those, while they've been really challenging for the sector, they're also acceleration drivers in terms of the awareness and importance of these issues. Ellie, you then are in a position of trying to integrate, I guess, your current staff with your brand vision and purpose and the way that the direction that you're going as an organization. How has that gone? And have there been any challenges in trying to engage your teams in some of these things?
Yeah, so great question. It's going much better than I had expected it to go, is the short answer. And the way that we've done it is we trained all the managers, and then now we're going in and briefing people at every level and launching green teams. And that is partly to make sure that we have representation at every level. We have back of house, we have bar, we have CDPs, as well as restaurant managers in the room. And that means that everybody's ideas are valid. And I think that is such a critical part of making sure that everyone feels engaged. I think we also kind of do group sharing on ideas and things, because there'll be things like there'll be a prep station where someone's been throwing away half a lettuce for 5 years because that's what happens. And they're not sure if they have the authority to tell head chef, hang on, could we do something with this? Or maybe it's not in typical staff food something, so it just slightly disrupts that chain of command. And the answer is always from head chef, yeah, oh my God, of course, I thought you were, or, when we have those kind of challenges, it's never met with anything but positivity, And I think the challenge for us as a company is actually around focusing on high impact stuff that may be less visible. So because people work day to day in the restaurants, they will see, I don't know, the paper that goes into the chip container or menus or whatever, and those will feel really critical, and they are critical for that person's job, but they will not be as critical in terms of our impact as things like tackling plate waste or sorting out our prep waste, or switching to green energy or whatever. So we've had to make sure that we find ways to do both, so that people feel like they're listened to and that their ideas are valid, because they are, but also sort of combine that visible piece with the high impact piece that can sometimes happen just behind the scenes and nobody really needs to get involved in it. So that's definitely been a bit of a challenge, but honestly, it's just been overwhelming. Like the ideas people come up with, and it's very unique to site, because we've got 10 restaurants now, and every site has a different plan for like these amazing ideas they're going to have for, I don't know, a steak sandwich recipe that they're going to publish for people to take home, or someone just wants to move a bin like by 1 meter and it makes a huge difference, and it's so exciting to go into the restaurants and see what ideas they have. So it's been mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing.
That's really exciting. And I think speaks to earlier about how the kind of opportunities that lie in hospitality, and you don't necessarily think about that when we're talking about how we want to engage more people in joining this sector, and what the opportunities hold. And one of the things we've been talking about lately is that you can be a kitchen porter, but engaging in these kind of green team things is upskilling you on sustainability, and these skills are really needed in the marketplace right now, and that's a really quick kind of trajectory forward. So that's really exciting to hear that you're kind of having such a positive
I mean, it's amazing. You get to be a leader in something, even if you're just starting out in a company. If it's your passion, you can take on a leadership role in your area. And KPs are some of the biggest, like we're doing a big water project, and it might be that we have to do the training in 4 languages, but talking about water saving and stuff is just a game changer, and they're leading the charge on it. It's awesome.
Brilliant. There's some really great questions coming through, so I'm going to pull one from the chat. Ellie, I think you've answered this a bit, but as Cyrus stated, sustainability and realizing the value of resources came from his upbringing, and he believes these values should be ingrained at a school level. Do you guys all agree that sustainability principles should be added to primary school education and give a head start, I guess, before further education? Or what could that look like in your imaginations?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's such a no-brainer, isn't it? And it is the most frustrating thing. And there's some great work going on out there as well. There's like the Big Barn project. There's Chefs in Schools. There's Adopt a School. There's all these other ones as well. But I mean, it's so easy, and there's so many chefs as well willing to get involved in these projects as well, which is another way of utilizing our industry. And maybe I nearly like to call chefs culinary professionals these days, because I just don't think they get enough kudos for how clever and how hardworking they are. Yeah, I just think there's such a no-brainer. It's so frustrating, but there is some great projects out there. It's just trying to get it all to come together. I'm hoping that from the NFS, the National Food Strategies report, that we're going to see some action now. And there's loads of people that can lead the way, like Paul's HIT training as well. They could be going into schools. They're definitely. It's going to have such a rolling effect, isn't it? With everything, with health, with everything. There's just so much money saving to be made in that small investment, I think. So.
Yeah, it's challenging, isn't it? Because it's like you said, such a no-brainer to engage kids in these issues. But there's also so much pressure on schools to solve every problem out there. And I know from the work that I was doing in schools for ages, you're not the only issue that is approaching the school trying to say you should add this to the curriculum and this should be so important. But one of the things that I think is really inspiring is there are ways where sustainability is on the primary school curriculum. It's just never joined up with the action happening in the kitchen. And it's so inspiring. It is. Go ahead.
I always say that, like, you can underpin so much with food. Like, there's so much education. You can underpin languages, you can underpin maths, you can underpin geography, you can underpin history. There's so much. It's just the whole don't get me started. The whole curriculum thing's all pre-industrial, and it's
I better cut you off before we start talking about education reform while we're meant to be talking about skills and hospitality. I guess this, as Paul, somebody that's training it directly kind of in the industry, and also Ellie, your experience in restaurants, with the industry being so hard hit by the pandemic, and there's clearly a focus on trying to make back lost profits. How do you feel about that kind of, is there a tension between profit and skill shortage, and just the fact that you need people on the floor, with giving people the time to upskill or to spend thinking about sustainability issues? Are those things in tension, or how do you justify that to a business?
Shall I come in on the restaurant side?
Great.
I don't think there is a conflict. I can't, when I started kind of setting out on the work, it was just as we came back, and me and the finance director totally had this like understanding that we would be fighting on all fronts. And it turns out that almost all the projects have been money saving, particularly when it comes to food waste. It's been like between energy, water, food waste. I think just like building in those lessons have made it totally in line with where our finance goals are going in terms of securing higher GPs. That doesn't mean that the question about upskilling is irrelevant, though, and sure, it does take longer. We tend to train people quite in depth when they start out with us, and there's obviously loads of new staff across the sector, so there's quite a lot to learn. But I mean, like the Guardians of Grub's 15-minute thing, some of this can be super quick. It doesn't take decades of expertise certainly on the kind of plate waste side of things. And often with the prep in the work that we're doing, if people are learning recipes and the menus anyway, it's just an add-on to that. It's not a whole extra upskilling. But I'm sure it's different in kind of the Michelin star situation, where you have to speak to very specific training.
Does anybody want to add to that?
Yeah, I think I agree with Ellie that there isn't a conflict. There certainly shouldn't be. I go back to my opening statement is, people are the industry's best and greatest asset. You can't bring about change and sustainability without having the people and the skilled staff to be able to do that. And I think the way training is being delivered, it's flexible to everybody. So, there is the college route, there's work-based, there's distance learning, there's different types of resources. There's so much more now for individuals to learn to their individual circumstances, to their learning styles. And I think, using the levy, wisely to fund programs where, that's something which, years ago didn't exist. We're seeing more and more larger employers pledging, percentages of their levy fund to support smaller businesses to be able to put people through apprenticeships and training. So I think now is the time, while we're in this skills shortage, to really look. It's a bit of a factory reset for a lot of businesses. It's like, how can we invest back into our people? How can we start developing teams? How can we start the backfill? We've had a lot of people that have left this industry for various reasons, and we need to build those teams and those sort of industries back up. So I would say, yeah, it's almost something which has to be as big a priority as these other messages.
Not agree more. Somebody has said in the chat, do you think the ideal future of restaurants is to be like Silo, a zero waste kitchen with a direct supply chain, recycled packaging, composting on site, i.e. don't have a bin on site? Is that a realistic future, or should chefs be aiming towards that?
I think it's going to be a work in progress for some organisations. I think that model might not work for everybody. I think if you can take some of those key messages, if you can start working closer to that kind of model, however that fits around your business, I think is a positive step. I think to do nothing is the worst thing, because you're not going to affect change. And I think some businesses will be able to take part of that model and make it work, others not so. So I think it's any kind of positive change is the best sort of foot forward.
I totally agree with Paul on that. I love Silo, not just for their ethos, but also the food's amazing. And I think that we give our exec chefs and everyone the book, Doug's book, because it's just got some amazing ideas and recipes, and it just makes you think, doesn't it? A couple of times when you see something left over, and we do a lot more pickling maybe off the back of that and things. And I think it's about raising the bar so that the average can catch up higher. So if you can have those leaders like Doug and Silo doing the absolute pinnacle of what's possible, then it will demonstrate what's possible at kind of a more mainstream level with less resource available or dedicated towards it, maybe.
Fully agree. And there's no kind of one size fits all solution to all of these issues. Just like you said, Ellie, 10 restaurants with 10 different ideas on how they're going to tackle these issues. And so there are 10 different, there are thousands of different ideas. And I'm a big fan of of kind of reminding people that we need millions, if not billions, of people to change their behavior for the better. We don't need hundreds of people to behave perfectly. And so we need to kind of find those ways, like you said, having Doug and others out there that are raising the bar so that the average can move higher, I think sounds like a really great way forward. We're coming to the end of our session, but as we leave, perhaps each of you could share your top 3 recommendations for businesses wanting to future-proof the skills of their teams. So Vince, could I start with you?
I guess, again, education, training, whether that be funded or something short or something online, but just having the training systems in place, and obviously keeping it all around sustainability and everything else. There's loads of resources out there, isn't there? I think knife skills are very important as well, to always keep the knife skills on top of the knife skills. That's going to save you a lot of waste if you have the right kind of knife skills, and when it comes to things like, especially with butchery and that. And then maybe just concentrating a bit more on the quality, and starting with the veg and working around the plate and adding the meats, and having kind of reversing that kind of trail of thought that we have to have the meet and then we work around that. So just trying to work the opposite way to open up people's minds is my 3 things, I guess.
Brilliant. Paul, top 3?
Oh, wow, that's going to be hard. I'll try. I think listen to your team. Invest in them, whether that's just taking some time one-on-one, whether it's a training program, a course, college. Make sure that it's appropriate. Lead by example. I think that's one of the best ways that teams around you learn, but making sure that people are all on the same page. And I think just take a reflect. People don't reflect often enough on what hasn't worked, what can they change. Take a good long look at the business, the people around you, and and where you want to go with it.
And Ellie, top 3?
I think top 3 are as much as possible talk about the why we do this, so that people don't just see it as an extra chore or like an add-on to their day job. I think, like Paul said, just involve everyone, make sure they feel like they have some purchase in making decisions, and involve them in the process as much as anything else, rather than putting tasks on people. And then I also think, like, don't try and reinvent the wheel. There's so much out there, and like there's tons on the SRA, there's Guardians Grub, there's RAP resources. Like, you don't need to come up with solutions, they're there. It's just, and it can be like 15-minute briefing before service. It doesn't have to be a completely massive project to take on.
Absolutely. Could not have ended that on a kind of better note. There are definitely resources out there to support you, and Food Waste Action Week coming up is a really good opportunity to engage with a wider community. The SRA, we host regular Sustainability 101 sessions for your team. As we talked about, they're really great development opportunities for young people that gives them quite a lot of leadership as they move through their career in hospitality. We know loads of brands that are hiring for sustainability managers and Ellie, you're in hot demand in terms of people asking you where to find another Ellie. And I think, recognizing that we need to grow that workforce so that there are those people in the future. And I think it's really exciting time to look ahead. So with that, I'm going to hand back over to you, Catherine, and thank you so much, everybody, for the wonderful session.
Thank you.